everybody, Ninjo X the Enlightened Gamer here. Welcome to the 5th installment of
Mind of Ninjo.
Last time on Mind of Ninjo, we explored the first game world of Donkey Kong 64 Returns, a fictional 3D collectathon platformer that is the literal successor to the original Donkey Kong 64, made by Rareware for the Nintendo 64 near the end of its lifespan. The very first level of the game was the Cobweb Catacombs, where Funky Kong had to traverse the dangerous cobweb-infested bile of what used to be Fungi Forest. Dominated by the Erich Queen, home to animal companion Squitter, and all-around dark and creepy descent from the original one-time game that was Donkey Kong 64. With that, we started to talk about how the themes of Donkey Kong 64 Returns would mirror more the second and third games as well as the Returns series, being a little bit on the darker side. Because Donkey Kong 64 took a lot after Donkey Kong Country, so Donkey Kong 64 Returns should take more after DKC2, 3, and R. Last time, Funky and Diddy blazed the trail to level 2. On an opening on the back of the Mechanic Rock, 2 metal doors, long since rusted over, slid apart with a loud screech, and now in an area only accessible by Diddy or Dixie, using his jetpack or the ponytail twirl respectively, is the one-time lobby of Frantic Factory, originally the 3rd level of Donkey Kong 64. Diddy makes his way to those 2 doors using his jetpack, as Dixie has not yet been recovered. And when he flies through them, blackness. Nothing but blackness, and the faint outline of a partner swap barrel. If you use the partner swap barrel, you'll be able to use Funky's plug on a small green console glowing in a corner of the lobby. When you do, a siren light, a red warning light, will bathe the area, flashing on and off. You can see that the power being restored to the doors also restored the power to the DK archway that opens up what was once Frantic Factory. But again, you find yourself in a situation where Diddy and Lanky this time are the only 2 who can reach the doorway. All the scaffolding that led up to the door has since crumbled into dust and lies in a heap below it. So you grab Diddy back out of the buddy swap barrel and jetpack barrel up to the door that one time led to Frantic Factory. Once you enter the door, a panoramic sweep of the new level reveals that it is no longer Frantic Factory, but Fallaway Factory. Being exposed to the sea air and being constructed of inferior metals has caused most of the factory to disintegrate. And what little is left is either cement or falling apart. But before Diddy can even take 1 step into the level, he's interrupted by a not-so-familiar foe. In DK64, oftentimes before minigames, Squawks, the animal buddy parrot, would interrupt you before beginning to give you kind of a heads up. But this time, now that you're helping the crumblings, the anti-Squawks, Screech, who you race near the end of DKC2, drops in on you. Screech is a little bit more negative than Squawks always was. Squawks was always, oh, you've got to get 50 plus tokens in order to get a golden banana. Screech just flat out tells you, this place is falling apart. If you don't move fast, you'll fall with it. And thus begins something interesting. You see, up to this point, everything has been an homage to the original Donkey Kong 64. Or at the very least, to Project Dream, which eventually spawned portions of Donkey Kong 64. But one great thing that the games that are coming into existence now, games like the much looked forward to Ukulele, Mighty Number 9, and the already beloved classics of Cave Story and Shovel Knight, is the revival of gameplay that we already love, and the inclusion of other different games, different gameplay aspects. Cranky Kong can use his cane like a pogo stick, similar to Scrooge McDuck, in the DuckTales Atari game, in the new Donkey Kong Country Returns game, Tropical Freeze. There are homages to all kinds of old games in the new revisions of those games, and not all of them are from the same franchise. And there's one type of very iconic level for an action platform that we haven't seen in over a decade. And I think Fallaway Factory is where that needs to happen again, where we need to see this come to be. The escape levels, similar to the inspired by Indiana Jones, seen in Crash Bandicoot. That's right. Naughty Dog, to my knowledge, shut their doors long ago. Thanks for interrupting my video, and with that, they sold off their rights to games like Crash Bandicoot. If I'm not mistaken, and I'll annotate it, or I'll put in text that says if I'm right or not, there was even a few Crash games on Nintendo consoles like the GameCube near the end of Naughty Dog's lifestyle. I know there was a Spyro game. I know Spyro technically was Insomniac, at least at first. But I think that this is where that type of level should make a return. Diddy has only a short warning before he has to chase after Screech and evade a giant cog. Something that has been collectibles up to this point, but this time it's trying to kill you. An interesting switch. You have to evade the golden cog for a long action sequence. Doing so will... Let me refer to my notes here really quick. Doing so will eventually let out into forking paths. The cog continues to travel down the middle path, which the player can only travel down if they're using Donkey Kong. who hasn't yet been unlocked. There are two options for Diddy. One activated by a pound switch, and the other activated by his peanut pop guns. Considering that this is directly inspired by Crash, the camera won't switch until you're at the end of the course. And you'll have to make a decision as to which one to grab. But let's assume you do the switch. Let's assume you do the switch because it's technically harder to get to and pound the switch in time. Doing so will fold back, will cause a section of the wall to fall away that Diddy can then slip into and hop over. On the other side is a small rusted room that, surprise, surprise, still seems enough intact that it doesn't start falling away as soon as you touch the ground there. And in this small rusted room, there is a very peculiar thing. A perfect circle of glass in the middle of the room with a single red banana floating over it. Bananas being the tease for secrets in the Donkey Kong series. You undoubtedly go and grab the banana. But as soon as you touch the banana, the glass circle on the ground opens up and turns into a vacuum tube. You're sucked down into a network of tunnels. But you don't see that. All you see is Diddy slipping below the surface. A moment later, you hear a familiar tune. You're about to meet up with a familiar friend and foe to the Kremlings from the last game, Snide. But his role's a bit different in DK64 Returns. In the original DK64, he was a scientist hired on by the Kremlings to help K. Rool construct his blastomatic laser gun so that he could destroy the DK Isles. Snide had no former allegiance to the Kongs, so he was more than happy to accept payment. But when K. Rool decided to not pay him and kick him off the project because he wasn't a reptile, Snide turned on his former boss. And with the help of the Kongs and several blueprints scattered throughout DK64, disabled the Blastomatic just long enough for the Kongs to get through Hideout Helm in time and shut it off. Well, Snide's been behind the scenes since then. After turning on K. Rool and the Kremlings and the Kongs leaving DK Isles, he didn't exactly have many more allies left on the island. And he didn't really have any way to leave the island either. So what he started was Snide's Agency. Anybody that would help him find dirt or secrets related to the Kremlings, and more importantly K. Rool, had a place in his agency. So then the question becomes, what's his purpose in this game? It's actually very similar to the purpose that he had in DK64. But unlike in DK64, getting all of the blueprints, this time they're journal entries, doesn't help you finish the final level. It unlocks something that DK64 didn't have. At least didn't have much of. Donkey Kong Country, when completed to 101%, all you really get is a couple of words of praise from Cranky. Wow! It would have taken a real hero to find everything. But in DKC 2 and 3, and Returns, again, I don't know about Tropical Freeze, but in all three of those, an entire secret world is opened up through the completion mode. But we'll get to that after the finale of Mind of Ninjo, Donkey Kong 64 Returns. And just like in the original DK64, each journal entry you bring back to Snide will award you one, in this case, golden cog instead of golden banana. Snide insists that K. Rool's still up to no good even after all these years. But also says that he hasn't found enough evidence to prove it. Which is why he's interested in the journal entries. He asks you to collect them, and then asks you to leave. When you leave, when you select the exit agency option from the drop-down menu after the dialogue is over, you enter a small glass chamber, presumably underground. And in it are many vacuum tubes, each with a level label. Cobweb Catacombs, Reptile Refuge, Fallaway Factory, and several others that we haven't gotten to yet that are still sealed off. Some of these, much like the chuffing train in Banjo-Tooie, will lead to different areas of their world that you couldn't normally access. In fact, if you were to go back to Cobweb Catacombs, you will find a unique area. The Owl's Overlook. A place where many of the familiar characters from Fungi Forest took refuge after the Erish Queen took over. You can't do anything with them until you unlock Dixie Kong. But you can check it out if you feel like it, and get access to a few new areas of the level. This, combined with the banana pads, will make navigating the levels, backtracking, and exploring the game much easier, much faster, and much more fun, I think. Similar to Banjo-Tooie's transit system, a game that was released slightly after Donkey Kong 64. But let's get back to Fallaway Factory. When you enter the jet tube, you'll find yourself in a weird area in Fallaway Factory. Everything seems new and kind of stable. Yeah, there are a couple of decorations and crumbling enemies and the like, except for four eyesores, four heavy metal bar doors, each one having varying Kong fruit symbols to open. This leads me to another point for DK64 Returns. The original Donkey Kong 64 was clever enough and, well, really kind enough to include the minecart challenges. But they were nothing like the first game, or the second, or the third. They were on-rails roller coaster rides where you could choose to jump and lean to gather coins. There was no risk of falling off the course. There were limited enemies. And even though all three of the courses were drastically different, ultimately they played the same. Unlike in the original game, where there were two minecart courses, one which involved you going straight through, and the other one which involved you leaving the minecart briefly in order to... leaving the minecart briefly in order to get to a new minecart before yours fell off a track into a hole. The second game didn't have minecarts at all. They had the skull coaster. The skull coaster had 3 levels, 2 of which functioned very similarly and one which was fairly different. Target Terror and Haunted Halls functioned by gathering green barrels and avoiding red ones in order to get from point A to point B. And then there's Rickety Race, which is a race. Actually a pretty tough race. At least until you realize that the trick to it, like many Sonic games, is not going as fast as you can and instead just going still pretty fast. The third, the toboggan. Seen in Donkey Kong Country 3 in sewer pipes and also on snow. These 4 portculli, or bar doors, I think it's a portcullis, are opened by the various Kong fruit shooters, the various Kong weapons. Funky has a ground pound switch that he can use to open the one door to the far right, the 4th door. But Diddy can get into 2 of them. Each one is an expansive game level built around one of these minecart challenges. Linear in that you can only travel in one direction, with only a few branching paths, but very dangerous and very challenging in that, like the original and like the ones seen in Returns, there's very little margin for error, and sometimes you have to get very deep into the course in order to unlock certain things. The 2 doors for Diddy, oh, I guess 3 doors. The 4th one is accessible by all of the Kongs. I guess you could just leave it open, but yeah, symmetry. The first door that Diddy can go to will activate a minecart course, where Diddy jumps with the cart and can even hold it in air for a short period of time using his jetpack barrel. His barrel jetpack. But only for a moment. And there are obstacles on this course that will KO Diddy and send him back to the beginning. Obstacles that Donkey Kong, who can also get through this door, would bash right through. Meaning that you have two defined courses within one for two different Kongs that lead to several different golden cogs apiece. A similar story for the second one, where Diddy and Dixie can get in, Diddy, Dixie, and Lanky can get into the Skull Cart coaster race. A portal that takes them to, well, a three-dimensional interpretation of Target Terror and Rickety Race, as well as Haunted Hall. If you are trying to do it with Diddy, you'll have the misfortune of being sent to the Rickety Race interpretation. A racetrack with many pitfalls, many other racers, and very high speed. A challenging course, and at times somewhat a cheap one, but very iconic for those who played Donkey Kong Country 2. A remix of Disco Train will be able to be heard on this particular level. The third door, which you don't currently have access to, at least not until you unlock Tiny, or Dixie, not Tiny, is the toboggan, where you slide down into the sewage pipes below the factory. There will be lots of zingers and the like inhabiting the pipes that you'll have to avoid. And unlike the original, you'll be able to go up the sides of the pipe, similar to most bonus levels in most Sonic games. The fourth door leads to what you would call the meat of the level. The rest of Fallaway Factory. In the rest of Fallaway Factory, you can explore as any Kong on rising and falling platforms that once touched Fallaway permanently. There is no turning back in this particular area of the course. Because you can switch between the Kongs, there is a Kong change barrel in this course as well. But be warned, though the platform directly underneath the Buddy Swap barrel will not fall away, it is the only one in this area that will not. You can trap yourself really easily. Don't worry. If you jump into the pit, you'll respawn all of the platforms that fell away. Platforms and level segments that fell away. By doing this with Diddy, you can actually access Funky in the Fallaway segment of the level, where you can make your way to Cranky's lab and obtain Funky's new potion for this level, the Simian Slam. A move shared by every single other Kong that allows them to activate the green switch with their face on. Collecting enough regular bananas and passing Clump and Crush will give you access to this level's boss. A boss who at one point would have been known as Mad Jack. But, due to falling into such severe disrepair, that title is lost to him. And his original name, from the beta footage of Donkey Kong 64, is what he used instead. Junk in the Box. Mad Jack is disfigured and mangled from atrophy. Covered in dust and cobwebs. This is actually Funky's battle, as no other Kongs will have been rescued up to this point besides Funky and Diddy. Funky will be raised up by the same white and blue glowing platforms used in the first battle against Mad Jack in DK64. But this fight has a few wicked twists. First off, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to hurt Mad Jack in each round, and secondly, any platform that you step on will fall away. And unlike some boss battles, I'm looking at you, Crash 2, Mad Jack won't simply fall in the hole that you create and get hurt. Essentially, Mad Jack will chase you around until there's only 4 platforms remaining, at which time a Funky Pad will appear on one of those 4 platforms at random. It could be the one Mad Jack is already on, it could be the one you're already on, and it could be one that neither of you are on. Funky will step on the pad and use Retro Romp, hopefully to damage Mad Jack. This is the part of the game where you really don't want to see Hippie Funky, because Hippie Funky is useless in this battle. And even though these last 4 platforms will stay up until damage is done to you or Jack, all Hippie Funky can do is run around until your crystal coconuts are exhausted. If your crystal coconuts are exhausted on the final 4 platforms, the other platforms will rise, and each one will have a crystal coconut sitting on it, allowing you to replenish your supply. But that's only Hippie Funky. If you get Surf Punky Funky, I had no choice, it was required, deemed by legislature, deal with it. Surf Punky Funky will be able to leave the arena entirely, and head into a series of ducts and tubes, not unlike the toboggan levels that you get to explore, where there will be a series of switches that you can hit. If you hit all of the switches, then an EMP bolt will be launched from all of the platforms in the arena, harming Jack 2 stages. Then there's Grunge Funky. Not a jalapeno flamethrower, but this time an electric Kiwi cannon. It essentially functions like a Tommy gun or a submachine gun that Funky can use to shoot tiny electric Kiwis at Mad Jack. Dealing 1/5 of a phase of damage apiece. The battle will last for 15 phases, much longer than the original fight against Mad Jack. Junk in the Box isn't gonna just fall down and give up. You're gonna have to beat him outright. And when the battle is over, Junk waves goodbye, just as he did at the end of the fight in the first game. And falls apart. And with that, once you've gathered about 15 more golden cogs from Cobweb Catacombs and Fallaway Factory, you can return to the Reptile Refuge. Putting the cogs into place this time does activate the fan. And yes, that will be a continuing pattern throughout this game. Fan, then Crocodile Isle's power supply. Then the fan, then the power supply. And so on. This time the fog blown away opens up the door to the one-time world, the Angry Aztec. I'll see you guys there next time in the next
Mine of Ninjo.
And until then, stay a brain and stay enlightened.